Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm here with Christine Deschemin. How are you, Christine? Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm doing great. Thank you, Jules. Thank you very much.
Christine, tell me where you're from and how did you find yourself in Hong Kong?
I'm from France, actually. I spent quite some time abroad. I lived in the US a little bit, and then I came to Hong Kong thanks to my work. I've been here for 11 years, I guess, now. Yeah.
Oh, great. Tell me a little bit about your early career. What did you do when you first started working?
Oh, I was an engineer. My specialty was mechanical engineering. So I was in charge of making planes fly longer, making sure that we extend their life, their shelf life in a way. And then I switched career after an MBA, after I went to the States. And then I went into finance. And this is what led me to Hong Kong being one of the financial centers in the world.
Then you changed careers again?
I changed careers again, as usual, not expected every time. But I foresaw the need for mental health services. And I discovered not that long ago, hypnosis. Actually, many years ago now. It feels like it was yesterday. Hypnosis. And that's why I started practicing. I went and studied again, obtained a diploma and additional certifications and so on and so forth.
Oh, how cool. And I believe that you were a talented athlete. And tell me a bit about the sport you were playing and how that led you to get an interest in hypnotherapy.
I'm not sure I was talented, but I was pretty good at it, given that I started pretty late. I was a fencer. My specialty was épée.
What is that?
There are three specialties. One is fleuret, one is épée, and one is saber. And they have different rules. So depending on, you've told people tend to do épée, shorter people tend to do the other specialty. It depends. A few qualities required. So I did épée and I really loved it. And this is where I started actually reading a lot about mental preparation for athletes because I had a very good training. So on the physical side, strategies for fencing, but mentally there was nothing. And so I had to go and learn. And this is where I started actually dipping into the world of self-hypnosis without knowing it because it was not named this way.
Ah, so you were using self-hypnosis to be better at your sport.
I was using it, but I discovered years later because self-hypnosis or hypnosis, and I explain why I actually use the two words interchangeably. Self-hypnosis is a state of focused awareness. So whenever you are really, really focused, you're in that state. And athletes, when they compete, they are in that state. It's called being in the zone, being in the flow. And even to train, they use that technique. And there is research showing that whenever you think about lifting one arm, you're activating in the brain a lot of places, parts in the brain related to the movement, except maybe the motor cortex, which is in charge of really lifting the arm. So it's like having a virtual reality, which is very unique. It's your own. You don't need to have goggles, which makes you sick sometimes because you perceive different pieces of data from all your senses, and you can do that anywhere, anytime.
In what way would you use self-hypnosis in your fencing? Was it so that you could manage to fence longer, so you were more accurate or focused, or to calm yourself or to build your energy? How did you use it?
All of the above. Yeah, to rehearse strategies, to stay calm, to have more stamina, to stay composed, because sometimes you don't score, but that's okay. That's life. Everyone knows it. Every athlete knows it. Every time that you're starting in like a new hole for a golfer or a new game, you're starting fresh and you have just to focus on that moment, and that's all.
So interesting. And then when did you decide that you wanted to become a hypnotherapist?
Ah, it happened very, very late when I discovered what it was to start with. When I discovered also coming from France, where doctors are very, very conservative. It's a country where the medical sector is very conservative. And I guess it's maybe a good thing. But I could see that they were interested. They were using hypnosis more and more in the operating theater. And I have this epiphany moment when I was talking to surgeons and said, oh, yes, it works. It just takes a bit of time. And I was like, wow, bingo. Because taking a bit of time is fine. We just have to take that into account when designing the process in the hospital. But it works. They know it works. They use it more and more. It has a lot of advantages, less anesthesia. It's less expensive because you leave the hospital faster. The experience is much better also from an emotional standpoint for the patient. You don't wake up groggy and all this. When I saw that and I saw the interest of doctors in addition to athletes, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And so then you decided from that this might be something that you might like to do for a career and to have a complete career change from financing to becoming a hypnotherapist.
Before that, I had an important client of mine. It was actually my first client who was an athlete himself. And I was not sure at that time what I was going to do with it. He insisted that I help him. And I did. And after 3 sessions, I could see the results. They were outstanding. This person went from a state where he had doubts to a state where he had this winning mindset. I was impressed, even though I know about the benefits. But when you help someone achieve the same benefits, it's different. And so then I started building my practice.
Wow, how cool. This is all in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, all in Hong Kong.
What is hypnotherapy and how does it work?
Hypnotherapy uses hypnosis. Hypnosis can actually use to describe the state and the series of tools that we use to achieve that state. And it's a state of focused awareness. It's not falling asleep. It's not losing control like we see in Hollywood movies, because people have these misconceptions. So the first question, what is hypnotherapy? And what was the second? Sorry, I forgot.
How does it work?
You bring that person in a state of focused awareness. And that's why I often use the word self-hypnosis, because it's a natural state that the therapist helps you bring about. You get into that state many times during the day. And so there's no magical power. It's skill. And so when you enter that state, it's self-hypnosis because you hypnotize yourself. Then you are into that state of hypnosis.
What's the difference between imagery or meditation and hypnosis?
I get this question a lot. Let's start with imagery. When you do visualize situations, scenes, let's say you're an athlete or let's say you're an executive, you want to speak in public and you want to be comfortable doing that. When you use imagery and you do it well, you enter that state of focused awareness. You imagine being there, you bring inside the experience, all the senses. You can hear whatever you're saying while you're presenting. You can see the crowd in front of you. You can sense standing there. You can imagine the light in front of you if there is any light, and so on and so forth. So you actually enter into a state of self-hypnosis. That's the equivalent. Meditation can lead to the same state of brain waves. So that relaxed state. But the big difference for me, meditation, depending on the kind of meditation you do, focuses on one thing, such as calming the mind or expressing gratefulness. Hypnosis goes much further because you have a goal in mind. You're here to improve your performance, to let go of phobia, to manage pain. So you go much, much deeper, and that makes it much more powerful. And we can see it now. I do see a lot of people who do the right thing, but too much of it because they're trying to find a way to escape reality, like doing too much yoga or doing too much meditation. Because you can't meditate away stress and anxiety completely, even though studies show that it has a beneficial effect. But you can't meditate away burnout. But with hypnosis, you can work on yourself to change your perspective of things. And this is where the mindset shift helps you be a happier person.
What kind of issues can hypnotherapy help? You mentioned a few like pain management and calming yourself and anxiety. What other things do people often use hypnotherapy for?
Let me think about all of them. It's going to look like a laundry list. It sounds very magical, but it is true. Anxiety, stress, depression, irritable bowel syndrome. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any other treatment than hypnosis. There's no pill for irritable bowel syndrome. We understand now the connection between the gut and the brain. Skin problems, birth, preparation for birth, preparation for surgery, dealing with anxiety related to surgery, performance, preparation, grieving as well. We don't think about this one, but grieving is such a personal and such a very complex and difficult process, and it can really take a toll on a person and decrease their productivity at work. So something that companies should actually think about. And pain management, I think I covered most of them. Maybe some of them will come later.
In a way, it can almost be used for almost any sort of ailment or anything that's troubling somebody. It's probably worth trying hypnotherapy because it can work. If it can manage things like pain, then it may not be a cure for things, but it certainly could change how you're managing it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you mentioned pain, for instance, people who suffer from chronic pain, it can really help them. The operating theater is different, but what they do, they provide local anesthesia and then they do hypnosis. So they don't make the person sleep completely, but they're still in local anesthesia because they're cutting something. But still, it's much better. So I would say, yeah, it can help anyone. The only situations where I would not recommend it are for people who have really severe psychiatric disease, such as psychotic, psychosis, this kind of thing. That's not right, and they need a different approach with psychiatry. But otherwise, everyone else, and especially I would say teenagers and children, they're so good at it. It's natural for them. It's second nature.
Why is that?
Well, they have this ability to have this daydreaming attitude, and they're able to visualize, and they play and they can imagine those characters playing together. They're so good at that. That's why they react so well to stories and so on and so forth. And so if we could just equip them with the tools that self-hypnosis offers, they will be so much more resilient.
Tell me a little bit more about self-hypnosis and how that works as opposed to if I was coming to you for you to be my hypnotherapist. How are they different?
If you were trained in self-hypnosis and doing it yourself, well, you know exactly what you want to work on and you would apply those techniques. It can include visualization, imagery, and so on and so forth. When a person comes to see a hypnotherapist, well, the first meeting, we have to understand what the needs are, making sure that hypnosis is something that they can do. So it takes a bit of time. And then we had to explain all the misconceptions around hypnosis. That's very important, which you would not have to do if the person is doing self-hypnosis already. And then we would have the session. We will help, we'll guide the person so that she can achieve that state with a series of techniques in the office.
Do you actually find that some people that you work with eventually learn self-hypnosis? So after you've worked with them for a while, they don't need you to facilitate it. They can do it themselves because you teach them the skills along the way.
Yes, I found that. Definitely. They can use it for themselves. And what we need to understand as well that hypnosis is such a fast therapy. And I like to refer to a study dating from 1970, Dr. Alfred Barrios, he compared psychoanalysis, traditional psychotherapy, and hypnotherapy, and the numbers speak volume. Psychoanalysis, 600 sessions, success rate 32 or 33%. So 2 out of 3 people don't get healed. And when you study psychopathologies, which I had to do, you discover that psychoanalysis, the purpose is not to heal, the purpose is to analyze. The healing aspect comes, it's like the icing on the cake, but it's not what they are looking for. So it's one thing. Psychotherapy at that time in the study, 22 sessions, 78% success rate. So still 1 out of 4 people, 1 out of 4 did not get healed. Hypnosis, 6 sessions, 93% success rate.
Are you
I
serious?
know. I am serious. The study is done by a serious person. It's a very old study and it says it all.
Wow, that's amazing. I really didn't expect those stats. That's super interesting. I'm actually astounded because I didn't realize that the difference would be so high and that hypnotherapy would be so successful. Tell me a little bit about how hypnotherapy can help with somebody's well-being.
Well, well-being it's a wide word and everyone is unique, faces unique challenges. Stress and anxiety tend to be a common point for many people in Hong Kong. And too much stress. I mean, there's good stress and bad stress, by the way, but chronic stress creates problems for the body, for the brain. Then you can't have this well-being. So by working on the stress, on anxiety, you help the body and the mind help themselves, actually. I can provide some examples. For instance, when someone has chronic stress, we know now that in addition to having a lot of cortisol in the body, which creates inflammation, which is bad, as we all know, the brain changes because the brain is plastic. So the brain also changes as a result of that chronic stress. And so there is a kind of rewiring in the brain under the influence of stress. And what happens, the higher functions of decision-making, judgment, for instance, memory, which are normally governed, mostly the first 2 ones, by the prefrontal cortex, most advanced part of the brain. Well, that part of the brain gets pruned, has fewer synaptic connections. So the neurons don't talk to each other as much, if you want. I make it simple. Whereas at the same time, you have a part of the brain related to emotions and to fear, in addition, which gets hyperconnected. So the brain is primed to be more sensitive to stress. So with hypnosis, by learning to manage that stress, you can actually help your brain reconfigure itself again in a better way.
Is that the similar theory to how it works with performance enhancement as well? Especially like if we're talking about sports people or academics or people needing to sit tests, can hypnotherapy help people be better at what they're doing?
Yes, when what they are doing prevent them from getting better. Let me give you an example. There's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. If someone doesn't believe that they can achieve so much, they're not going to take action, right? So the beliefs condition the thoughts, and the thoughts lead to action or inaction. So that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So by helping them realize that their belief to start with was a wrong, erroneous belief, then they can unleash their potential.
I see. Share a story of how hypnotherapy has changed somebody's life significantly that you've worked with.
I can think about a teenager who used to suffer from a depression and what happens, cut herself. They tried a lot of, they came to see me. And of course, I don't diagnose. The person has to still stay in touch with the doctor in terms of following the medication and everything. But we did a few sessions. And later on, when I met the father again by chance on the street, he was very happy and she looked very changed. She was a changed person. So that was very positive.
Isn't it lovely? That's so great. Especially, I was going to ask whether younger people can be hypnotized as easily as older people, like children and teenagers. Is it just as easy?
Just as easy, even easier, because as I said, they have this innate ability. Because remember, hypnosis is a natural state. You are in that state many times during the day. So it's just about being more in control by creating that state and leveraging it to make the changes you need.
Is daydreaming a little bit like hypnosis?
It could be. Let me give you an example. When you are driving, for instance, let's say you're driving and you get to the destination and you don't remember having driven past a particular point, or you don't need to drive. You can be in a bus or in a subway. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm already at the destination. So it's a kind of self-hypnosis. Yeah.
How many sessions might a person need to have with you or with the hypnotist to find that it's successful? Does it vary depending on the issue and the person and their ability to be hypnotized?
It all depends on the person, whether they know about hypnosis, whether they have to be taught everything about it, how motivated they are about getting better. And it's a question I get asked all the time. I'd love to be able to answer that right away on the phone, but it's impossible because at the end of the day, you are doing the work. There's no magical power resting with a hypnotherapist. I want to make that clear because Hollywood makes it as if we were controlling everyone. It's not true. In that case, everyone would be a billionaire at this stage. It's not happening.
In other words, things could change and work in one session, and for others, it might take many, many. It just really depends.
Absolutely. And when I gave you the 6 sessions, very often for me, we have lots of good results after one session, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, rarely above that. It happened a few times with severe cases, but rarely.
Can everybody be hypnotized?
I would say yes. I know that there's some studies saying no, but I would say yes. It's a skill. It's about knowing what to do. It's not about applying the same method all the time.
Tell me a bit about this app that you've created called Upnow Hypnosis. What is it and why did you create it?
The state of mental health in the world is appalling and something needs to be done. Hong Kong also has this problem, and we had the virus and we had protests before. So something needs to be done. And at the same time, so there is a stigma. People know that they're not doing that well. The alternatives, there are a few, but not enough. When you look at the stats in terms of number of therapists in Hong Kong, it's not enough. And so when it comes to hypnotherapy, people don't know and might be afraid or might read those lies on the internet. And so I thought about creating an app where they can do that from home. It's like listening to something else, but you're listening to self-hypnosis audio download. There's no fear of being controlled or sleeping is going away. You can be so relaxed when you're at home that you're sleeping. I've had many of my clients tell me that they've used it. And they're like, wow, I fell asleep. I'm like, well, that's fine. You were relaxed at home and that's it. That's a very good sign. So if you're having sleep problems, that works beautifully. And so for me, it was for people to experience what it is, that we move away from that disinformation. Hypnosis is approved by many medical and psychological associations in the world. Go and check the American Psychological Association. Why do I mention their website? Because they put a lot of things there compared to other countries. And hypnosis is clearly mentioned as a valid therapy for many things. Europe is using it. France is using it. Belgium is using it. So it's time that Hong Kong also gets in that bandwagon.
How can people utilize this app in their daily lives? You mentioned resting and relaxing and going to sleep, but could they use it to change their eating habits or quit smoking or to alleviate stress or anything like that?
Yes, they could. Many things they can do. We have structured all the app into categories. Some of them are related to emotional eating because people who are stressed tend to express that through, I can see you
like me, yeah.
through eating. I have a lot of things related to performance as well because I think there's so much to be done because we spend so many hours at work that we should enjoy our hours there. Well, I have so many things. I have things about bad habits as well. And now with the COVID-19, we have this pandemic. Who knows? In the future, we might have others. And the climate is changing. So being healthy is the priority of many people. And now that we understand the mind-body connection, we need to also leverage the mind to feel good and to help the body.
Yeah, it's definitely good advice. I really think that that's fantastic. And I love the sound of this app. I think it sounds absolutely brilliant. How does it differ from a meditation app? I suppose meditation apps are really to get you just to relax and sort of it's a guided relaxation, isn't it? Whereas this hypnosis app, it's more specifically targeting different things, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's absolutely the case. So you're listening to that when you are really at home, very relaxed. Don't do that when you're driving, for instance. That's a very bad idea. I mean, even meditation, you should not do it while driving, but I just want to highlight that. So it can be done anytime because what matters is repetition. Every time when we learn something new, whether it's a soft skill or hard skill, we need to repeat that. That's why there's a concept in learning called spaced repetition. Every time you review the same thing, you go and actually strengthen some pathways in the brain. And that creates pathways that are pretty resilient. So that's why with the app, I recommend that you listen to one particular topic audio for a month, for 28 days, every day, once. Each audio is about 20, 25 minutes. The pain management one might be a bit longer. And that's it. Half an hour of your day to really take care of yourself. Because when you do take care of yourself, your family feels it. They also learn by looking at you. Your children learn from seeing how you cope with events. So you're actually benefiting your family as well.
Oh, that's lovely. I wanted to know why you call it Upnow. How did the name come about?
Oh, it was not easy to give a name, but
I quite like it. I think it's catchy.
Yeah, I wanted to do something short for sure. And for me, the idea is to give something to make you feel up and now so that you can get up now and do whatever you need to do. Stop procrastinating. That was the idea. Get things done.
Lovely. I really like that. That makes a lot of sense too. It's cool. It's a catchy name. What were some of the challenges that you faced in creating that?
It was my first app. So even though I have like a technical background, an engineer by training, I had to go and relearn a few things. Some time ago, I did study full stack web designer, developer. Let's get that way. So I had to relearn about computing, learned about how to design websites, for instance. Not that I was going to do it, but I want to understand what gets into the developer's mind. What do they need? So a lot of going back to school, relearning, and then managing the project at a distance. So when the crisis happened in Hong Kong, for me, there was little change because my whole team was virtual, most of it. And so I was already used to managing people at a distance. That was very, very helpful. And I think those things can be done.
Is the app up and running now? Like, is it available?
It is available. We have the iOS version on the App Store. We have the Android version on Google Play. And you just have to search or look for Upnow Hypnosis on both stores, or even better, Google upnow.com, and you will find our website with all the relevant links to find this app.
I'm definitely going to check it out. I'm going to download it after this interview for sure. It sounds fantastic. What are your greatest takeaways from creating an app? What did you learn?
I learned that you can really, really apply what you've learned and use technology to reach out to more people. The model where you have to go to see someone whenever you have an issue, I think it's outdated. I think people have to focus on prevention. People are aware of this when it is about their body, for instance. They tend to eat well. They do their best to eat well. But when it's about managing their emotional state, they just take it for granted or like, okay, I'll deal with it later, or that's the way it is. So prevention is key. And so using an app is a way to actually help a lot. So you can be traveling and still have your daily session without worrying.
Do you do all of the sessions on the app? Is it your voice, or do you have other people talking on the app or other hypnotherapists?
So far, it's my voice.
Oh, how cool. You've got a lovely voice, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. No, so far, it was my voice because I want to have the best quality, possible there. So, given that I see people day in and day out, I know exactly how to say those things. And it's a real skill that you develop over time.
What do you love most about being a hypnotherapist?
What I like the most is being really able to help people move ahead on their journey, make progress when they feel stuck. Everyone comes with different issues. And that's why I like my training as a scientist or an engineer, or even as a person who is more quant in finance, is very helpful because I see the person, I think of it as there is a software there. And there's something wrong with that software that was added a long time ago. But now it's no longer serving the person. So let's find what that issue is and make sure that this person leaves with an upgraded system.
That's a really lovely analogy. I like that. And it fits with your background perfectly.
It does.
Do you think that you can work equally as well with people online or on this app and in person? Like I imagine during COVID, you've been doing some of your sessions online with people. Would that be correct?
Well, no, I offered that, but interesting enough, the people wanted to still see me. So for a few weeks, I had to basically say, I'm not sure we're going to basically not see anyone for a few weeks to be safe, because everyone's responsibility to contribute to the well-being of our city. But we can offer that also online. And I see more and more requests because people are not able to travel at the moment, but they still want to feel well, feel good about themselves.
What would you say are the biggest challenges that you face about being a hypnotist or about convincing people that hypnotherapy works?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. My biggest challenge was the general public in Hong Kong doesn't know about hypnotherapy. I've talked to a few surgeons. They get it, which is great. They understand the power of hypnosis because they always have to renew their knowledge and expand it. So when people don't know about it, that's a bit difficult to offer the service. So the first clients I had were mostly expats who have discovered that in their own country and came to see me. And there is a big NGO in Hong Kong which is focused on mental health. I don't feel that they want to talk about hypnotherapy either, which is a bit of a problem because the purpose is to help people feel well, feel good. And whenever we can take something early on, stress, anxiety, it's really a big achievement because those things might evolve into depression or even more serious disease. And so we have to offer to people all the solutions that are out there. And nowadays, with all the research on hypnosis, of course, it's not as big as big pharma. Of course, we don't have thousands of people, but we have more and more studies on that. Doctors who are actually saying it works. Dr. Spiegel at Stanford has been researching hypnosis. Harvard mentions hypnosis for helping women who had breast cancer to deal with anxiety, and so on and so forth. So it is there, and let's use it.
What do you think people's resistance to it is? Is it not tangible to them, or do they feel like it's hocus pocus? Do they feel like there's no sort of proof that it works?
I
guess anybody, it's up to the individual really, isn't it? Everybody would have their own individual opinion about it, perhaps.
Of course, perhaps. But when it comes to people, they're not told that it does work and not told about the studies. That's why on my website, I do spend a lot of time talking about all the studies, big and small, because it's
your statistics shocked me earlier. You know, so that was very convincing.
Convincing. And there are many studies. And you know what is interesting about hypnosis? You can go back, I don't have the exact date, but the late 1900s. And the British, I think it was called the Medical Society at that time, mentioned hypnosis and mentioned all the benefits of hypnosis already a century ago, more than a century ago. In the mid 1950s, more or less, or maybe even earlier, I don't have the exact date, but it was recommended that doctors do follow training in hypnosis. It hasn't happened from what I understand.
Because of big pharma companies and the kickbacks and the money that doctors get from prescribing drugs. So that's probably part of the reason why it hasn't had the uptake that it could have had.
Maybe. And you know, at the same time, you can read studies in the 1970s talking about mind-body connection was frowned upon. So all the doctors who were looking into that, even relaxation, at the time, studying the relaxation impact on immune system, for instance, it was frowned upon. And there were other forms of therapies and there were other ways of treating people, and people didn't see a need for that. Nowadays, we know it's wrong. Meditation has proven that it can help people. Self-hypnosis can also help people.
Yeah, I think it is about educating people. It's about people being more open-minded. It's about being willing to try new things. And hopefully this kind of attitude will evolve more over time.
It will. It is already.
It is already, isn't it?
In Europe, the shift, in the US as well.
There's a massive
Actually,
shift towards well-being, isn't there? Whether it be meditation or yoga or mindfulness or things like hypnosis and
absolutely,
different ways of healing, acupuncture.
absolutely.
There's lots of ways that people are realizing that they can heal their bodies rather than going straight to conventional medicine.
Absolutely. Look at the opioid crisis in the US. It's a shame, and people are, see that, and therefore it makes them think about twice about what to do with their body. People tend to live longer as well, so we might see the side effects of all those treatments as well. People with the internet and all, they can share their experience, so they can talk about whether something worked or not.
I meant to ask you earlier whether hypnosis can be used for phobias. So if
Oh,
people have
yes,
a fear of spiders or a fear
yes.
of clowns or whatever, how can it work for phobias?
Oh, yes, of course. I thought I've mentioned it, but no, I didn't mention it.
I think
So,
you actually touched on it, but we haven't gone into it in any depth.
yes. So again, it's a irrational response, and it's related to belief as well. Whenever we see an irrational response, reaction, when the person knows that she should not be reacting this way, I mean, a picture of a spider in a magazine, some people will actually put themselves in danger by running away, looking at the street and crossing the street and maybe being run over by a car. That's the same principle of helping people look at things the way they are, because they made a huge image of that thing.
So it's about really addressing the fears head on and making them understand through hypnosis that there's nothing to fear.
There's nothing to fear. It's make them more comfortable with the idea. It's also leading them into that imagery, visualization. And as I
And
said,
I suppose also using a self-hypnosis if you got into a situation where something arose, being able to calm yourself through self-hypnosis as well. That could be part of it too, couldn't it?
absolutely, absolutely.
And what about operations? Like I've seen or heard of people actually hypnotizing themselves and then going on the operating table. Is that true or is that a myth?
No, it is true. I can tell you that because when I decided to study that, again, I'm a very rational person. I'm an engineer by training. I wanted to see what was happening. I discovered that it was used by doctor surgeons and anesthesiologists in the operating theater. So it's not a dream. If you understand French, you can see that on the website. You can see a news video where they follow a patient who is going through that. And you see the surgeon working somewhere. And then next to the person, there is a nurse who is speaking that person, continuing the hypnosis. And as I said, they inject a local anesthetic and the rest of the body is not under anesthesia. The person is not sleeping. And why did they do that? Because some people cannot have a general anesthesia. It's dangerous for them. Let's remember that anesthesia, it can be dangerous. It's not something safe completely. I mean, of course, most people come back and wake up, but it can be dangerous. So some people can't do this. Second, there are cases where surgeons would rather have the person awake. And I remember this video of this African singer in France. She had a cancer in the throat. And so the surgeon was afraid of actually damaging the nerve in his throat. So what he made her do was sing while he was operated. He was basically taking out things. She was singing at the same time. After they interviewed her and say, how did it go? What did you feel? Of course, he has local anesthesia. Of course, he's cutting something. He said, well, no, it was like daydreaming. It was like, I went back to my head to where I was born. And it's quite interesting. It is not a myth. Some countries are using it. You have research showing that it's less expensive. It has fewer side effects. When you come out of this operating theater, you're very big. You have edema. So you don't have that, apparently. I didn't do it myself.
No, I don't think I would either. But do you think it's going to be more common in the future? We might see more of this.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Interesting. Let's keep
Absolutely.
an eye out. I don't know if I'll be a guinea pig for that, but
even dentists.
I can see why it's a good idea.
Dentists are using it. At the same time, I remember going to a pain management conference a very long time ago, and there was a lot of people who worked in hospitals. It's all known that some people in some culture need less anesthesia when they go to the dentist than others.
Mm-hmm.
And this is
my daughter and I need a lot, both of us. It's weird. Yeah.
So there's something, to be said about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the head.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how about,
Maybe, but that feels like it's genetic because it's the same for both of us. Yeah. Oh, Christine, look, this is all so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us about hypnotherapy. It's really, really interesting. How can my listeners find you if they would like to have a session with you, learn more, talk about your app or anything like that? How can they get in touch?
Okay, so they can get in touch with me. I have two websites. So the first one with my Hong Kong Hypnotherapy Center, renewed-edge.com. And you can find a lot of articles there. You can book with me there. And there is a phone number. You can contact me if you have any question about what we can do with hypnosis. And if you are interested in my app, you can find a page there, but you can also go directly to the website for the app, which is called upnow.com. And you will again find a nice, very interesting blog to educate yourself on the topic and find the links to download the app.
I'm going to download that app straight after this interview. Christine, thank you so much for joining me today on Hong Kong Confidential. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And I really wish you all the best of luck with your new app. I hope it goes really well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it? I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.